Look, here's the deal. We have a chance to stop gun control. This is something that has been successful through this method in the past previously when it comes to the M855 ban, when it comes to the pistol brace ban, when it comes to various import bans. When it comes to the ATF proposed guidelines regarding the 80% firearms and the frame or receiver definition, we have the opportunity here to potentially stop them from massively infringing on our rights. The Second Amendment is merely an acknowledgement of the rights. Regardless of whether they make something illegal, it doesn't actually take away your right to do something, so it's important for you to understand that. With that being said, there are means to make it so that the ATF and the government doesn't have the ability to further restrict our rights in a way that would put us in jail for simply wanting to make a firearm in the state of our own home. Now, I do want to say thank you to 80% Arms for sponsoring this live stream and this video. They've been a huge help to me lately, especially with everything going on. A big reason why I like them is they are active in various lawsuits regarding the ability for you to manufacture a firearm in the comfort of your own home. If you're interested in that kind of thing, they're easy jig. I mean, it's in the name. It makes it easy. Even a dingus like myself can do it. So I want to say thank you to 80% Arms. In this video, I am going to be showing you a cut down version of a live stream that I did where I actually wrote my own letter, which I then submitted to the ATF. I'm going to have links to where you can leave your public comment, as well as if you watch this video, it should give you a good idea of how you can potentially structure yours. Do not simply copy and paste mine, which will be down in the description on ODYSEE as well as on YouTube. Do not just straight up copy it, but maybe use it as a guideline for how you might want to word yours. Hopefully this helps give you the information that you need to help make your voice heard. Thank you. Here was the kind of a template that I kind of wrote out when it comes to how to write a good letter. So I got the actual link to the PDF document of the proposed rule change, and then I got the summary and whatnot on the ATF portion here. Blog post that I think kind of does a good job of kind of showing people how to potentially write this in a way, some key points to hit on. Here's how I'm going to write it. I'm going to kind of follow this template as a general idea of how I want to write my actual letter. I handwrite like a blind 5-year-old, and I type like someone who's just learning how to type. So my name is Reno May, a firearms designer, and I can say that I'm a firearms designer because I did actually design that 3D printed Glock. So that was technically a new design on my part, so I can say this. I am a firearms designer and shooting enthusiast, and the proposed rule change, and then I'm going to copy this, will affect me and will cost me a large sum of money. I don't know, I feel like that's a good way to like intro into it, saying that it's actually going to affect me. Affect me the most are the ones regarding, let's see, should I say 80% firearms and that first, or should I focus first on the definition of a firearm, frame, and receiver? I'm gonna say that first. Okay, so that's my intro saying like, hey, these provide 1 to 2 rules that would affect you the most. These are the ones that are going to affect me. Let's see, I should say as well as the FFL marking requirements, because that will affect me, because the monetary cost of having an FFL that can do that, as well as the difficulty of finding one that has the proper machinery in place to actually laser engrave something. Are you ever going to address why you converted to Islam? Well, since I didn't convert to Islam, I guess that would be a pretty simple, easy thing to address. So yeah, I got, let's see, paragraph 1 right here, basically saying, hey, my name's Reno May, and this specific rule will affect me monetarily, and then saying these are the ones that will affect me the most. I feel like I should address that. I kind of want to mention the fact that California, with our laws specifically, the reason that I'm saying this is if they're changing what the definition of a frame or receiver and saying that for every firearm that they don't currently have a specific ruling on, that every single part would have to be determined to be the frame or receiver if it contains one of those main firing control unit parts. Let's say someone that's designing a 3D printed firearm. In the state of California, one of those pieces has to have a 3.7 ounce piece of 17-4 pH stainless steel inside of it, the piece that is actually considered the firearm. Now, if I were to being the state of California and wanted to legally make one of these firearms myself, until the ATF actually gave me a determination letter saying that this specific part is the firearm, I would have to assume that every part should be treated as the firearm if it contains one of those firing mechanism pieces. For my personally designed firearms, if the ATF does not clarify which specific part is the firearm, frame, or receiver, I will not be able to make my own firearm at home due to California law regarding homemade firearms. This will make it financially impossible to build my own firearms and prevent me from having a legal way to do it. Does that make sense? Okay, so in this paragraph here, I said which rules will affect me, and then I'm elaborating on that first rule, and then I'm going to elaborate on the second one. For the polymer frame, so I'm going to say for the polymer frame firearms that I would manufacture for my own self, it would be impractical and impossible in many cases to embed a piece of steel to engrave upon after the fact, after it's already been produced, after that firearm has already been made, designed, built, and is functional. If I were to take that to an FFL and they needed to put their own markings on it, on a polymer firearm, like a 3D printed gun or any polymer firearm, it would be almost impossible for them to be able to put in a new piece of metal embedded into it permanently that would hold the FFL's manufacturing marks. So basically what I'm trying to say is like there are rules that they would want to put on me. So if I were to build a firearm from a 80% arms lower receiver that was aluminum, the big difficulty is I would have to find someone that can do that. I would have to find someone that has a laser engraver or has a hand engraver, and many stores don't have a laser engraver just sitting in the back of the shop. Some do, but most don't. Most aren't actually in correct zoned areas in the city to actually do that kind of manufacturing work, if that makes sense. So even if they did have the room, they wouldn't be able to legally put a laser engraver and do that kind of machine work potentially if there's certain zoning laws that would prevent them from doing so. So if I were to use an 80% arms lower, even if someone could put that actual proper engraving on it, most of them don't have the ability to, and even if they could, if it was a polymer lower receiver, it would be damn near impossible for them to properly embed permanently a piece of metal for them to engrave on. So it gets pretty difficult. Most of my polymer firearms that I've made would be, there's no way for someone to actually put a legal serial number on it after the fact. I've put one on it inside the gun, but there's no way to do it after the fact. So it's pretty difficult. And so I think that this paragraph here does a good job saying, hey, this requirement is something that would not be possible for most places to do. And even if they could, and even if it was practical for them to do so, it would be cost burdening, I guess. I think that's a good way to put it there. So let's see. I touched on the FFL marking requirements, and then I touched on the definition of a frame or receiver. So the current standard says that if it is 80% of the work done, meaning that all of the machining, if you were to classify each specific task, 80% of the task has been completed and nothing more, meaning that the end user would have to do 20%. That's been a long-held standard of how much work needs to be done. It was very consistent. It was easy to understand. The new wording that they're putting in place is much more vague and is much more burdening to the average person. At the same time, because it's so wide and the amount of work that it would potentially classify pipe shotguns as a firearm. So going to Home Depot with the intent of buying 2 pieces of pipe and a little nail to put at the end to be a firing pin, would that be a firearm? You know, it's too vague, and I think this is the part where it's too dangerous for them to have this kind of rule in place. So that sentence was, the new standard, which mentions 8 hours of work in a fully equipped machine shop, is so wide and vague that it would make even the raw materials fall under the definition of readily convertible. So the rules mention the existence of jigs, instruction guides, kits, and various other informational resources, whether it considers something readily convertible. Now, what this is saying is that if there is information online on how to do something, that makes it more readily convertible. Someone with the information that knows how to do it already, is them knowing that information, would that make it illegal? Versus, so does that mean that if I know how to do something, could I not be able to legally go buy a block of aluminum. But then if someone doesn't know how to convert that, could they go buy that same block of aluminum? Now, me knowing the fact that pipe action shotguns exist, would that mean that because I know about that and I'm aware of those documents on how to convert 2 pieces of pipe into a 12 gauge shotgun, would that mean that if I bought 2 pieces of pipe that happened to be that way, would that mean that I'm in unlawful possession of a firearm versus someone that doesn't know how to do that? Could they buy those same pieces of pipe and not be in trouble? I think the fact that they're referencing whether or not information and guidelines and instructions and blueprints, I don't think that should have anything to do with whether or not something is readily convertible. Information is not illegal, and information should not be illegal. There is an extraneous in after PMF at the beginning of the 4th paragraph. Let's see. Yep, because I was going to say when making my own PMF in California. Thank you for that catch. I appreciate that, man. No, I am not a grammar person. I was a science nerd, not a English nerd, aka I went to school for something real. Boom. Okay, so the rules mention that the existence of instruction kits and guides in whether something is readily convertible. The existence of information is not illegal and does not change whether something is more or less functional. I guess, yeah, that's fine. Does this mean that someone who is aware of the instructions could not legally buy the precursor parts, but someone without that knowledge could? If someone knows the plans for pipe shotguns made from pipes you find at a store, does that make those pipes illegal to own? Whether the information exists should not affect the legality of the parts. Code is speech, and so is instructional informational guides. I think that's solid. I think this is a solid, short, small letter. I don't think this is crazy in depth. I think this is just a good example of like, hey, these rules would affect me in this way. Here's how it would personally affect me. Here's how it would affect me monetarily and or legally. Appreciate everyone. I encourage you all to go down and leave your own comments if you have not done so already. Hopefully watching me write mine and seeing my thought process on how I did it might help you make a better one for yourself. Add less grammatical errors. Yeah, try not to make as many grammatical errors as I did. How often am I on Twitch? I am going to try to do this like on a weekly basis. I was doing this a couple times a week when I was like working out, and I felt like that was good. The problem was I moved, so for the last month I wasn't really working out, and I'm kind of just getting back into it. So I think at this point I am back ready. We're going to be live on Twitch more often, so hopefully I can see more of y'all in here. It's usually been a good way for me to interact with people. There's usually only like 30, 40 people in there, maybe sometimes a high of like 70. So I think Twitch is a good way for me to kind of interact with all y'all. But you all know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.